Everything we thought we knew about Marianne just got thrown out the window.
She loved you.
She attacked you. We both saw it.
I thought coming here would be closing a chapter of our lives.
Nothing good comes from stirring up old memories.
We don't really have a choice about that.
There's always a choice, son.
I can't do this. Stop!
Tell Me Why is a 2020 game developed by Dontnod Entertainment, the same creators that made the Life is Strange series, and is exclusive to Xbox and PC. And in typical Dontnod Entertainment fashion, this is an episodic game. This is 3 episodes long, and it follows the story of Tyler and Allison. These are both siblings. They haven't seen each other for about 10 years. And when you start the game, you pick up 10 years later after they last made contact with each other. The reason for this is because Tyler was sent to a juvenile detention center because Tyler killed their mom. And it's up to you to understand why that happened. One of the most interesting things about this game, and is kind of a first for video games, besides kind of the gameplay element of it, is that Tyler is actually a trans character. Tyler used to be a girl, transitioned into being a boy, and is now Tyler. And the interesting thing about this is that Allison actually hasn't seen Tyler being transitioned into Tyler because he was sent to a juvenile center for a crime he committed against his mother. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about this because I'm not trans myself, obviously, but I like the element of having a sister who is dealing with someone who's now not their sister anymore, and also having someone who used to be a girl transitioning into a boy and coming home for the first time after 10 years. I think that's a really cool kind of starting story to get you interested in these characters. I think if you've played a Life is Strange game or anything from previous Dontnod Entertainment games, you will get a feel of what this kind of game is. It is a story game where you make decisions and there is somewhat puzzles in the middle of all that, but it's mainly a story game where you go along with the story. It's more or less a casual game in my eyes, casual story game in my eyes. However, it's very, very similar to what you would expect in these types of games. There's not really any surprises with this game. That's kind of where I bring my first negative with Tell Me Why. There's nothing really new here. It's very much the same that we've expected from the previous entries that Dontnod have done, which are fine because they've worked and a lot of people like these kind of games. But I would have liked something. I think I've said this before in a previous review, and I can't remember exactly what game it was, but I think this genre needs kind of to revamp itself a little bit. It feels like it's going a little bit stale at the moment, and it's mainly down to the gameplay elements. A lot of the gameplay elements is walking around, finding things. A voice line from one of the actors plays because they remember something about said object. And until you find the right one, then the story moves along. And then there's occasionally like times when you can change the story. And I'll get to that in a minute, but it's very much the same thing. The main thing with the gameplay department, besides following along with the story and picking choices and picking things to say, is that this is mostly puzzles, I would say. There's a heavy focus on figuring out things about the old house that Allison and Tyler used to live in with their mother. They've gone back to this house to kind of clear it out because it's abandoned and no one's using it and they're trying to sell it. And as they're clearing out the house, they start to notice things and you kind of have to do little puzzles to get into certain rooms. And I like that. That's cool. The puzzles mainly involve you reading a book. And that's fine. It's fine. I was okay with it because I liked the book that was being presented without spoiling too much. I liked the kind of the theme around it and how this how the whole game kind of plays on this theme. At the same time, I would like a little bit more variety around it. There's a lot of puzzles where it's just like, look at this chapter, look at that chapter, look at this chapter. And it's it's not really fun when that's the only kind of type of puzzle that you have in this game. I also understand that the gameplay department may not be the most important aspect of these types of games. For a lot of people, it's the story, as I said before. This comes in 3 episodes rather than 5 that Life is Strange came in, which is absolutely fine. I actually think it's paced well with 3 episodes. I really like the opening episode of Tell Me Why. It's a great introduction to these characters because there's a lot of mystery at the very, very start to what exactly happened to these guys' past to make them separate, for Tyler to transition, for them to be away for so long and seemingly not really contact each other as well. There's a lot of mystery to that and them going home to figure out what happened 10 years ago and meeting the people that were there 10 years ago and they understand what happened. I think episode 1 is a super, super strong episode. It really got me hooked into this game. There's also that underlining, and I say underlining because it's not thrown at you all the time. I think a lot of people were, say, worried that the whole trans character was going to be the main kind of shouting point of this game, and it's not really. And I'm kind of glad it is. Not because I don't think there should be trans characters in the game, nothing like that at all. It's mainly because they do such a natural element to these characters when confronting old generations of people who are not used to this. So, for example, Tyler is meeting someone who is a lot older than him. And the last time this older character saw Tyler was a girl. Now, this older character has quite old views in a way, but the way they do the conversation around it is very natural. It's not essentially like, you know, trans is good, you should accept it. It's more a case of they're trying to understand why this person feels the way he does about Tyler. I think it's a really realistic and modern way of how trans people are viewed today. There are some people who completely understand, like Allison. Allison is more forgiving. She's more understanding of Tyler's kind of transitioning a whole lot more than some of these older characters from a different generation than Tyler and Allison. And I think that's a more realistic take on how people view transgender people, how some people don't know how to respond to people when they should just act normally. And there's some people that have absolutely no problem. There's like no difference. And they're just like, you're Tyler, that's fine. And I like that. I really like that about this game. Tell Me Why is an interesting game, especially at the start. I think episode 1 is one of the strongest episodes that dontnod have put out, especially. I think it will hook you somewhat into its story, at least. But the way the story progresses from 2 to 3, it kind of falls a bit flat. 3 is probably the one I least liked. It just seems like there was a lot more to tell, or there was a lack of something to pursue, or lack of tension. I think that's the main thing. There was a lack of tension that was in the previous games. And I'm going to compare it to Life is Strange because, you know, they've made Life is Strange and that was a hugely popular game. There was a lot more tension in Life is Strange, especially in the later episodes of Life is Strange. There's some of the most tense, unpredictable episodes ever in episodic games I've played. This doesn't have it. It kind of hooks you in with episode 1, and then 2 and 3, it just seems like there's a slow movement to the whole thing where it could have probably even, the whole game probably could have been done in 2 episodes, if I'm being honest. It seems like the third one is a bit, I don't know. I think I did like this game. I think there was something there, and I liked the characters, and I thought the story was promising, and I like the initial setup of it. I think it's a really interesting setup, not just to do with someone transitioning, but also seeing someone for the first time in 10 years, when the last time you saw them, they were someone else. And how do you react to that? And how does the town react to that as well? How does the people react to it when this person comes back, especially if it's to do with a crime that was committed by this person? How do they put themselves back into normal life? How does that work? And at times, the game does a magnificent job of it. But there are times where it doesn't go anywhere from there. You kind of want it to go more into interesting places, and it just doesn't. But if you're looking for something in this kind of genre, I think it's worth a punt. It's on Game Pass at the moment, so you can check it out if you have Game Pass for no extra cost if you've already subscribed to it. And I think it's okay. It could have been a lot better. It's okay. But these games are more or less presented as you make your own decisions. But in a lot of cases, especially this one, it doesn't feel like any of your decisions make a difference really until the very end, until you get ending A or ending B. When you have so many of these games come out that don't have that many kind of branching paths or only really have like minor things change about them, it does get a little bit boring and same old, same old. So maybe a change to how exactly these stories work. I know this was a side project for dontnod. They're working on Twin Mirror at the moment, which is their main project, and hopefully Twin Mirror can do some things like that, where it kind of explores the choose your own adventure kind of thing a little bit more. But I haven't seen like a branching out storyline that has huge impact on your consequences since Detroit Become Human. With that being said, I'm going to give Tell Me Why a 6.5 out of 10. So, elephant in the room, I'm sorry. It's been 4 months since I did my last review, which was The Last of Us, I think. And it's not because that game completely traumatized me, even though it kind of did a little bit. But life happens. There's a thing going around at the moment that's really affected everyone's lives. You know what I mean? And it's bad, obviously, and it's not good. But I've decided to come back now because I kind of need this kind of outlet of, I love games. I really, really love games, and I haven't been able to play as many as I could in these last few months. In fact, I've played, the most I've played was in the last week. So in the last week, I've played more games than I've played in a total of like 4 months because life happens and shit happens and you just got to deal with it sometimes. It's the same with me, same way everyone else. I do hope you're all okay, everyone watching. Let's try and make this sort of a happy place because there's a lot of shit and negativity at the moment on the outside world. And I've experienced it. I'm sure you've experienced it as well. There you go. I'm back. There you go. I was gone. Little holiday. Had to sort out life. Life sucks sometimes. You got to sort some shit out. Also, a little announcement. I have been doing a podcast for the last 20 or so weeks by the time this video comes out. It's called the Unusual Suspects Podcast. It is all about movies. So if you want to listen to a podcast that's kind of like a funny comedy podcast about movies where we talk about some shit films, we talk about some good films, and some absolutely fine films, go listen to the Unusual Suspects Podcast. We may be coming on YouTube soon, so that's a secret. So don't tell anyone about that. Just between you and me, though, we may be going on YouTube, so you can subscribe on YouTube once we get on. But we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast things. It's myself, a guy called Andy, and a girl called Penny. We're all funny, I guess. We just reached 1,000 downloads within the space of like 3 or 4 months, which is pretty good for a new podcast, I guess. And yeah, if you like movies and talking shit about movies, you might like this one. So go subscribe to it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time.